So this was the world map we were dealing with in former videos. Our resume was that if C was a descendant of Q, that the Americans would be 100% Q, and large part of Eurasia would be Q as well, and Australia would be Q. But that's not the map we will do here. We will switch to, so this was Y DNA haplogroups that is linked to the male part of our genome. And now we will go to mitochondrial DNA. So this is a world map, but this time it's completely different, except that it's also a world map, and it's about mitochondrial DNA, mitochondrial haplogroups, human migration. So again, there are migrations designed for us, but the same as for Y haplogroups, they are inspired by consensus. And I prefer to use the haplogroups as they are, without the migrations that are suggested by consensus. So a bit odd, against expectations and against consensus, is that the haplogroups, mitochondrial haplogroups, A, B, C, D, and even X, but the first 4 haplogroups are in the Americas. That's kind of an, let's say, I don't go into it. It's the first 4 mitochondrial haplogroups are in the Americas. But you see, they leaked out of the Americas, at least if I'm right, that they come out of the Americas. Leaked out here, all this C and D leaked out, possibly in India, but I cannot find the letter to confirm it. But at least this whole part, this C and D. So if you add this up with what you find here, A, B, C, D, then all of the Americas are dominated by American haplogroups, mitochondrial. And an important part, A, C, X, are dominated by American mitochondrial haplogroups. That's, I should say, that is almost half of the planet. We don't find them here. So if they were, in fact, A, B, C, D, X, if they were American haplogroups, they totally dominate the Americas, and they leak out significantly to the world. In fact, where we expect them most. But I always, as always, argue against, they didn't come over Beringia or over Bering Strait, because there's too much permafrost. If they came, then it was by boat here or by boat here. I personally do not believe that nor haplogroup Y, and especially not mitochondrial haplogroups, migrated over some of the most severe permafrost on this planet. So they came in differently. They came in, let's say, mainly this route. It's the Yenisei River. And the Yenisei River, amongst others, goes down to Altai. And Altai must be more or less here. So it covered everything to the east of Altai and to the south, to the old cultures, which you will have heard several times from me. That means Indus Valley and Southeast Asia, following the Mekong River. Although in the Mekong River, it changes haplogroup. Of course, it's a region with a lot of movements afterwards. Because C is the haplogroup, mitochondrial haplogroup from the Amazon, so it's the first in my hypothesis. So it's the first, so this is a very old movement. So this region is very much affected, a lot of movements afterwards. And funnily enough, you find C, you don't find it in Japan at first sight. If this represents what goes to Japan, I didn't see C, I do see C here. So, but in Japan, there's a lot of movement too. Of course, in China, there's a lot of movement too, but apparently it doesn't appear. I suppose this is Japan, this is China and Japan. So I would not be surprised if it was overtaken afterwards. In fact, A, B, and D are also haplogroups of the Americas. So it's not overtaken by another continent. It's overtaken by the same continent. It's all leakage of the Americas. And we don't go into Australia because I don't have it figured out at this moment. I suddenly work with mitochondrial DNA. And one of the reasons is that it's in fact not human. It's from the mitochondria. And the mitochondria are descend from bacteria. But they are life essential for us. And they are brought over from parents to children only, or almost only, to the mothers. So that's why they call it female DNA. But that's not truly correct. And it's no offense to women, because women pass over more DNA than males pass over. So they don't need the mitochondria to say that genetically they are equally or even more important than the male participation in offspring. That aside, because that's not what we are doing, we are looking at mitochondrial leaking of the Americas, which is quite impressive. It's equal, probably more than the leaking over from haplogroup Q and C. I'm talking about Y-DNA C, because this is mtDNA C. So let's have a quick view at Africa. First, before I forget it, if you would type in mtDNA, mitochondrial DNA haplogroup L, which is supposedly mitochondrial Eve, which is where we all descend from. So you see this, we all descend, it goes all the way, and it populates the world. That's consensus. But if you would type it in, you wouldn't even get a result, at least not in world maps, or not even continent maps, because I suppose it doesn't even have enough frequency to have its own map. But now we will look into it, and they gave it a place, mitochondrial Eve, and that seems to be here, L0. And it spreads over Africa, but it doesn't pass the Sahara. It doesn't pass to the Middle East, so it doesn't leak. It has not even a frequency map. So you cannot even look at the frequency of it. It's probably not significant sufficiently, but for consensus, it's extremely important. And this, as I claim, this and the other Y-DNA map is brought to you by consensus or influenced by consensus. So it's extremely important. But what I want to point out, that L0 is next to Madagascar. And they in fact make a connection with the Pacific, and by making a connection with the Pacific, you make a connection with South America, with Central and North America. So what I claim, but I cannot work this out in this video, is that B comes from the Americas, not from the Amazon. It's already mutated, or it's specialized. It comes from South America or from Central and North America. I won't go into the routes that it followed, but we know there is, for instance, there is a Pacific route that passes Australia, Southeast Asia, and in other videos you will find that it also goes down to Myanmar, to the Andaman Islands, and if you would look at currents, you know it can get in Madagascar. There's other connections between South America, Australia, and Madagascar, but I won't go into it. But I claim, and will argue afterwards, that this or this B ends up in Madagascar, and that L0, which is recent, and we know that humans see this for millions of years, this L0 is 200,000 years old, or 250, because consensus is increasing the number of years, and it got out of Africa 50,000 years ago, and later it got out of Africa 80,000 years ago, and I recently read something more than 100 so much years ago. Anyhow, but it arrives, it starts here. This is the location that consensus gave it. And at least the start of mitochondrial L, the African mitochondrial L, the supposed ancestor of all the world, lies here according to consensus. And coincidentally or not, it lies next to Madagascar, and Madagascar has genetical connection with B, and B is South, Central, and North American. So resuming, all American haplogroups are leaking out heavily. At least, let's say, if you would consider this half of Asia, at least to half of Asia, Eastern Asia. And also to Madagascar, and from Madagascar, 200,000 years ago, it mutated or was hybridized into L0. And from L0, it spread out to Africa, but never reached Africa north of the Sahara, and never reached the Middle East, and never reached anywhere of the world. And if you look it up, mitochondrial haplogroup L, you won't get a world map or even a regional map, probably because it doesn't present enough frequency. There's not enough basis. It's here, and it's in several hypotheses, because it's the consensus hypothesis. Thank you for watching.